computer. Aha. Okay, I want to welcome everyone to this month's meeting of the Nashville Microsoft Azure Users Group. We have 2,600 members. Well, actually, I'll let you see. I made a whole slide for that, so I'll let you see that. Come on, why aren't you moving? Okay, so this is our mission. It's all about Azure, everything about Azure, from developer to infrastructure to management and everything. We have an open forum for discussion. We had more of an open forum when we met on premises together, but we still do our best. It's anything relevant to CIOs, CTOs, architects, developers, IT infrastructure manager, system administrators, and others. We were founded back in 2013 with only 4 members. I founded the group. And currently we have over 2,600 registered members, and we're still growing. Tell your friends and coworkers about us. We could always use more members. In fact, because we have so many members, we took a look at our membership, and we found that a lot of our members were not from the Nashville, the greater Nashville area. So we have people from all parts of the state and the country, and in some cases maybe other countries. We're not quite sure. None of our members are outside the area, so we decided to just be a global group and do it all online, which is what we're doing. Okay. We did something else. Something we did that was interesting recently. We opened up the group discussion board as a job board. So if you're looking for a job or hiring for a job, we want to keep it very light. So just post a short message in the group discussion forum with your contact information and let people contact you directly. Okay, well, as I said, we're always meeting online. We'd like to support the group and be the group for the group. So if you have a topic that you're interested in and you want us to set up a meeting for it, let us know. If you have a topic that you'd like to present in, let us know that as well. Because like I say, we are a group for the group, above the group, and by the group. We have a board of directors. I'm the group's founder and president. By day, I'm an Azure solutions architect in a new company, which will soon be announced. Vice President Roger Dahlman is the co-founder and vice president, and he's an enterprise architect at Deloitte here in Nashville. And Tim Warner, who's another vice president. Tim, some of you may know, he's a prolific Pluralsight course and book author, and that's the link to his website, which is really interesting and good place to go. Jack Hagler has been our refreshment sponsor when we used to meet on premises, and now he's providing the Zoom subscription for us. So he's works for a source firm called Vaco, and he's an associate director of recruiting. Sponsors, again, like I said, are Microsoft, who pays for our meeting dues, and Vaco, who pays for our Zoom subscription. We used to have others. In fact, our sponsors page lists another company, A Cloud Guru. We're in the process of working out a sponsorship arrangement with them so they can provide us with some goodies to give away or some training subscriptions, whatever. If you would like your company and you have a commercial company and you'd like to have 10 or 15 minutes to talk to the group, I'll even forego my talk if you have an interest, 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of a meeting to promote your company, product, or services. And in exchange, we'll take whatever you can give us. Sponsorship can include raffle prizes, gift certificates, products, training course, freebies, whatever. We're not bashful. We'll take whatever you got. If your company is interested in co-sponsoring a future meeting, get a hold of Roger Dahlman. He'll set something up for you. I mentioned earlier that we post our meetings on the YouTube channel. This is a quick shot of one of the pages of our YouTube channel. We've been doing this for quite a while now. As a result, we must have over 100, meeting talks now. It's true that some of the older ones are probably less interesting, but some of the newer ones really are useful. So with that being said, I'm going to turn things over to our presenter. The title is Why I Spoke with my little eye. Seeing the Secrets of Microsoft Security Copilot with Bluevoyant. President from Bluevoyant is Micah Heaton, and I could read you his background, his bio, but I'll just let him tell you about himself when he starts. And now I think I'm turning things over to Micah. So Micah, you can take the control, I think.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity to join the meetup group. I really like sessions like this where it's a little bit smaller, kind of more intimate. It's a community of folks who are typically friends or at least cohorts, peers in the business, especially in the area. And it means a lot to me to just be able to chat. So I'm going to preamble for a moment, Bill, and then I'll share my screen. But
Okay.
as we get into things, you will see that the company that I work for, Bluevoyant, we have a specific targeted interest in Copilot and a specific targeted interest in Azure in particular. And so if this isn't a sales presentation, this is very much an engineering presentation, but if you see things along the way that stand out to you that you'd like more information about, I'm joined by my peer and colleague, David Blessington, who is from the area, who's a great candidate to help you spin up a dialogue with Bluevoyant. So Bill, if you don't mind terribly, I'm just going to give David 30 seconds to a minute to introduce himself and his interest in the group and the team here, and then I'll share my screen and we'll dive into the content if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine.
Go ahead,
Absolutely.
David.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Micah. Appreciate the introduction. So Dave Blessington, I am based out of Nashville. So client executive for Tennessee as well as Kentucky with Bluevoyant. Really appreciate Bill hosting this. I've been in Nashville for over 15 years. So, hey, I'm not one of those new folks that are here in the hood. If you have any follow-up questions regarding the topics that Micah is talking about or Bluevoyant in particular, don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you again for your time. Back over to you, Micah.
You got it, David. Thank you. Bill, I do need you to make me a host, and I might need to rejoin, I guess. Yeah.
I have seen that happen before. So let me find you. Okay. And I'm going to make you the host. You have all the power.
Uh-oh. I don't need all of it. Just screen share.
Yeah, sometimes people can get by with just co-host, but
Oh, look at that. Perfect.
sometimes.
All right.
See if you can share your screen.
Yeah, this is perfect. This is perfect.
There you go. Very good.
All right, team. So my name is Micah Heaton. I live in the Seattle area, so today I'm an interloper. But I was sharing that I have a lot of fondness for the Smoky Mountains in particular, and I hope that, let me just resize this. I appreciate the opportunity to join the team here. My personal background is that I worked at Microsoft a number of years ago, specifically on the device management team doing cloud escalations for Intune. And for the past 5-6 years, I've supported Microsoft technologies, specifically on the security lens, for a company called Bluevoyant. And if you're not familiar with Bluevoyant, that's okay. We are actually pretty young. We're probably the world's foremost deployer of complex Sentinel architecture. So as you could imagine, Copilot is coming in really hot for our customers and the conversations we're having with the Microsoft product team. But just some kind of table setting here, because this is a smaller group today, I would love it if you have a question, if you came off mute and came on camera and just shared your thoughts or your insights. So I have zero ego whatsoever about being interrupted. In fact, I don't have slides. I just have things inside the Microsoft portal and some diagrams and things that I put together, because my intention is to show you a little bit more than just talking about it. But that's my background, folks. I've got a few certifications that are probably relevant to you: Azure Security Administration, M365 Enterprise Administration, and I am a Microsoft certified trainer. So I spend a lot of time talking to customers, peers, friends, colleagues, meetup groups like this, just in active discussion around what's going well with Microsoft, what's the hype and myth versus the reality. And this is one of those topics that's really interesting to me right now, because there is a full court marketing press from Microsoft around Copilot for security. And knowing what this group is, you know that Defender for Cloud on the Azure side for Microsoft's threat protection workloads for things like Defender for servers, Defender for storage accounts, containers, etc. a big chunk of that went generally available last summer to no marketing fanfare whatsoever. But you can't even turn the corner without seeing somebody holding a digital sign for Copilot. And that's really stood out to me, that we are essentially being overrun with marketing buzz language about generative AI, generative AI. And so where we have a great amount of respect and deference for Microsoft in terms of how they've lowered the playing field for entering in the landscape of cybersecurity practice in general. Like, for instance, I don't have a master's degree in cybersecurity. I was hired into my company by former CTO of the cyber division of the FBI. Guy's been working in cybersecurity for 20 plus years. I don't have that background, but Microsoft has made it possible for me to participate in a really healthy way with customers that are trying to drive good security outcomes, because they've lowered the playing field with tools like Copilot, with tools like Microsoft Sentinel, with tools like Defender for Cloud. And because of that, I've been able to kind of embrace what it means to be a security person, but from the perspective of Microsoft. But that being said, I've got to admit that, like, I am somewhat a little bit wary when I see the marketing stuff hitting us full blast and not as much of the engineering stuff. So we're in a really interesting place. Copilot for security from Microsoft becomes generally available on April 1st. They just announced this just last week, which I thought was a terrible date, by the way, to launch Copilot for security on April Fools after all of this fanfare for basically the past 9 months, unabated, just nonstop fanfare around Copilot, to launch it on April 1st. Bill Alden says that he is waiting to be let into the room. If you have an opportunity to bring him in, if you still have host permissions. So there's an embargo as a partner that's been part of Microsoft Security for Copilot's Design Council, meaning that we've had early access visibility to it. We've actually been helping Microsoft's product team sort of design Copilot. I'm not allowed to actually show you Copilot proper. So the way that I'm getting around this, and if Microsoft sees this YouTube video and asks what was going on here, I took screenshots of Copilot, and I'm going to kind of walk you through a story
Micah,
of that.
Micah, let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I made you host, and now I can't let people in.
Oh, no, no problem.
So I think if you can operate as, try making me co-host since you're the ghost.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people waiting here. I'll just grab them all real quick, and I'll leave this up on the side, and then I'll find you, Bill, and make co-host.
Yeah, and see if maybe
there you
I
are,
can
sir.
let people in. I've never done it backwards like this, but
hey, it's all good. I let everybody in that was waiting. Sorry, folks, for folks that were hanging out in there. We're just kind of kicking off our conversation about Copilot for security here. So, myth versus reality. I am a huge fan of all these generative AI tools, and I mean that sincerely as an individual contributor. I've got a little bit of a background in web hosting, a little bit of a background in coding, a little bit of a background as a field services engineer doing like server RMA work, and a little bit of background in cloud, and then a more prominent background, the latter 5-6 years in security, specifically around the Microsoft security products. And Microsoft has been catapulting through the Gartner and Forrester rankings as they've continued to invest a lot of R&D dollars in things like the Defenders and Sentinel and Defender for Cloud, et cetera. So it's come to me as no surprise that with the relationship that Microsoft has with OpenAI, specifically as an investor, early investor, that Copilot has come on so hot and as quickly as it has. But that being said, I've got a subscription in ChatGPT Pro. I've got a subscription in Gemini Ultra. I've got a subscription in Anthropic, Claude AI's most recent iteration of their LLM. And so I'm coming into my expectation around Copilot as having been a user of these LLM, large language model kind of systems like GPT for the better part of a year. And so I'm trying to be fair to Microsoft, where they're launching a product pretty early on in the life cycle of their service around it, but probably a little bit behind the curve. I joined this call and I remarked right away to Bill, like, oh, I haven't used Zoom in a few months. Zoom's got an AI assistant. And I think that this is going to be ubiquitous. And I suspect that if I were to look at the catalog of YouTube videos, you've probably got a number of AI sessions that you've already had. So Your mileage is going to vary if you're like me and you've used a lot of these different things for different reasons. Like I've noticed that conversationally, Gemini can help me put together like a voiceover script for a promotional video for my work really quickly. Whereas if I'm doing some kind of code review on like a Node.js application I'm building, I get much better results out of GPT and Anthropic. And then somebody will release a brand new model, right? An updated model that's based on, you know, a much larger subset of data, and then it's the best thing. And so I'm just watching this, and I think that everybody is trying to get in on this game, but you know for certain that based on the amount of money that Microsoft's willing to put in terms of security R&D and Copilot, they're really going to just continue to take this generative AI thing by storm.
Hey,
And I want
Micah,
to, yeah, go ahead, sir.
quick interruption. I've got an option here to reclaim the host. I'm going to try to do it and see if it.
I did give it to you. I did give you co-host.
Oh, you did give me co-host.
Yep. Yep,
Oh,
100%.
okay.
I don't see that anybody is waiting in the
Okay,
lobby.
good, good.
Yep, I admitted everybody that was in there.
Thanks a lot.
No problem at all. So you'll notice in the chat, I put a couple of chat links. The first link I put in is to something that Microsoft hasn't, at least as of a week ago, this might have changed in the past week, but they had put this together under the cover of night. They did not announce this publicly last I checked. They started building a learning path. And if you're interested in those Microsoft certifications, you'll know that this is the new system as of the last couple of years that they put together. So instead of just the hard and fast, you know, MCSA type certification tracks, they built certification tracks around roles. And they have a specific learning path around Copilot for security that you can start learning around. I don't see that there is a certification for this yet, but after this, if you are interested in getting a little bit more of kind of a feel and taste of what Copilot is, this is a really great place to start, because again, Copilot is not going to be generally available for commercial consumption until April 1st. So I put this link in the chat. I do really like, there's a lot of things about Microsoft's documentation over the years that you know, sometimes makes you wonder who's responsible for keeping documentation updated. And a lot of times it's the community, or it's interns, or it's people who are supporting escalations in their particular area, whether it's Entra or Intune or Azure. And then even within Azure, there's 100 different categories. But I do like the way that they have started to shape the learning paths. And so while I haven't gone through this one personally, I do feel like it's probably a really, really good start. The next thing that I wanted to show that I put in the chat is Bluevoyant's approach to Copilot is really about helping folks orient themselves towards its use cases based on roles. So in your particular role as either a contractor or an auditor or a full-time employee, supporting your organization or potentially customers of your organization, are you performing incident response and security analysis type work? Are you within the compliance, governance, and legal side of the house? Do you write or research threat intelligence for your organization? Are you a technical executive sponsor? Are you in cloud ops or DevSecOps? Is this a network persona? What we're trying to do is help folks understand that there is a opportunity to leverage Copilot. It's not just for people who would be analysts working in a SOC. It really is it really does have use cases for all types of personas and roles in the organization. And so I linked to this checklist. You're all very smart. Otherwise, you wouldn't show up to an Azure meetup group after working hours during a work day. So I suspect that these topics are really interesting to you. So this might feel somewhat remedial. The reason this might be useful for you is if you are trying to motivate your organization to make an investment in Copilot on your behalf, both to purchase it from Microsoft or potentially to leverage the support of a services company like Bluevoyant to help you get it going, then this is something that you can share internally to say, hey, maybe we should be making an investment in this, because where you might have thought this was just for the SOC analysts, it looks like there's an opportunity for other folks in the organization to benefit from Copilot's capability. So what I want to do now is really just show you what Copilot is, actually give you a sense of how it operates within the environment. But if I could pause just for a moment and kind of poll the audience that's present here and just ask, has anybody actually seen Copilot for themselves, a demo of it on YouTube, anything like that? Feel free to come off mute and video and kind of share with the group what your experience has been so far, or even just in the chat. We'll give you just a moment here to answer.
It's quiet.
It's okay. No
Okay.
problem at all.
I
learned.
have used it indirectly with Bing, like I said earlier.
Yep.
It saves me hundreds of hours doing research, solving problems, It builds me a document which describes a solution to a problem, which I love.
Yeah, you just made a point that I neglected to talk about. So what Bill's talking about is there's a Copilot that is natively integrated with the Bing search engine. And if you use Google and you search, you'll see that before you get to the top level searches, there's generative AI text that displays saying, I think this is the most likely common denominator aggregation of the answer that you're looking for. And that made me realize that I neglected to point out, Bill, that there are multiple Copilots. So today we are talking about Copilot for security, but there is a Copilot for GitHub. There's also a Copilot for M365. There's also a Copilot for services, which folks might not have been aware of, that allows you to develop integrations for things like ServiceNow and Azure so that they have connective tissue and communicate effectively. And so in the same way that Microsoft has sort of claimed the space of the defenders, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office, Defender for Identity, Defender for Cloud Apps, and all the 10 Copilots under, or excuse me, 10 defenders under Defender for Cloud, Microsoft is sort of adopting this standpoint of talking about the generative AI capabilities as Copilot, whether it is a coding Copilot or a Copilot that supports you in your productivity and collaboration environment, as in the case of Office 365, or a Copilot in the case of security. And just looking at the chat here, we've definitely got some of the users, Damu, VJ, Chris, who have all leveraged the various generative AI tools, or at least seen a presentation or two or a snippet on YouTube. So this is coming, folks, and I think that this is it's very obviously here to stay. It's incredible how this stuff has become ubiquitously adopted, at least from the standpoint of the very least, folks are asking GPT to rewrite emails before they send it, to their CEO or whatnot. So what I want to show you is how Copilot works within the context of performing one of the functions that you see on the screen here. Chris had an interesting comment, and that was that he uses ChatGPT a lot and has leveraged Bing quite a bit, but is seeing some operational differences between these things. And I think that's going to be the case for a while, that things are going to kind of become a little bit more and more niche as time goes on. So folks, this is what Copilot looks like. There is an embedded experience, which I'll show you a sneak peek of later on as we're talking, but Copilot actually has its own subdomain. It's just securitycopilot.microsoft.com. Now, it will be interesting if Microsoft renames that, because before they've even announced that they were going generally available on April 1st, it was Security Copilot, and then they renamed it about a month and a half ago, which is very true to form. If you've been around the Microsoft bend for any number of years now, you know that the Ignite conference is a really exciting conference from the standpoint of all the new announcements, but it's also a time for the marketing team to decide that they're going to rearrange all the the chairs on the deck. So before they even relaunched Copilot, they already renamed it to Microsoft Copilot for Security. But at the moment, that the URL to browse there, the same way you get to the Unified Defender portal, security.microsoft.com, securitycopilot.microsoft.com is how you get to this environment. And right away, you'll see something very similar if you've used ChatGPT or you've used Gemini or Anthropic or any of these GPTs. It's a very similar setup. It's basically a place where you can just ask questions. The use case with Copilot is that you can specifically ask it to interrogate your environment, and it has a number of plugins that allow it to deduce what it is that you're trying to accomplish, but it's all driven off of English language. So I have found that the Copilot use case for organizations that do not have a full-bodied SOC team, meaning maybe one of you on the call, your job is on Friday afternoon to change hats, you put on the security hat and you go look at incidents and you try to make sense of what's risky versus what's malicious versus what's not really a big deal. Copilot has the potential to rapidly accelerate your investigation effort, because if you're not familiar with Custo query language, you're not familiar with threat hunting, you understand the concepts from like a Lego building block standpoint, but you're not individually a security practitioner. You might have an interest As long as you know the right human language to prompt the experience, you're going to get a good result. And before we go further, what do I mean by that? When I first started seeing the GPT and DALL-E stuff and people were making cool images, I started to see this kind of theme that people were putting prompt engineer on their resume. And I was like, what? I like rubbed my eyes. I was like, what is a prompt engineer? What does that even mean? Do you mean that you are putting on your resume that you know how to talk to these AI tools and produce a result? And I was like, that's ridiculous. Nobody should be putting that on their resume. And I've completely, a year plus later changed my opinion on this, because anything that you are doing today as your daily routine can be improved by these things, either from an automation standpoint or a coding standpoint, or if you're a copy editor and you just want to rewrite something. Your ability to harness these tools to your benefit has the opportunity to be amplified by your experience. So putting down that you're not only this thing, but you've also been able to accelerate and amplify your capability in your space, in your profession, with the generative AI tools, that is a legitimate thing, absolutely, to put on the resume. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I am a security practitioner and I know a little bit about Kusto query language, which is the native threat hunting language where you can review, it's not even just for threat hunting, but it's the way that you can systematically parse information in your Azure environment in like a log analytics workspace. So you can develop a query that says, I want to go find all the malicious IPs that are in my environment. Well, maybe you don't know Kusto query language. That's okay, because Copilot is going to make up the delta. So I want to run you through a little bit of a routine here. And you'll notice that there's some similarities between this and the other tools that you might have seen. If I'm just the person who wears the security hat on Friday, this is super beneficial. So I just asked Copilot for security, do you see any malicious IPs showing up in my environment? And the first thing it does is it tries to understand what it is that I'm asking, and then it tries to match it with a plugin that can compute some kind of output against what I'm asking. And so it says what they're looking for is to find evil in the environment. That's IP addresses that can be correlated against Microsoft's threat intelligence known to be malicious. And so you can start to like make some assumptions about what it is that I'm asking and how to get there. If I have some query logic, then I can frame the syntax to find, first I need to see all the IP addresses, and then I need to correlate all the IP addresses that are manifesting in my environment, access logs, audit logs, sign-in attempts from auditors, contractors, or FTEs. I want to see the sum total of IPs that are interacting with my environment. Well, that's a massive data set. You can see right away, even if you don't have users that sign in and out directly from portal.azure.com, you might have like an application that's hosted in Azure where you have customers that transact in some kind of online facing portal that is hosted in Azure. And that's an IP that is essentially coming and going from your environment. And so Copilot's like, okay, I get it. You want to see this thing, and the way that I can support you is by activating my KQL plugin. And so there's a plugin here that says, after a few seconds of it trying to understand exactly what I'm looking to accomplish in human language, it deduces that it needs to activate the KQL plugin. And then it puts together this theoretical query. And I say theoretical because, as with all of these tools, you do need to check the work. There's this word in the AI universe right now that I don't love, and it's called hallucination. And if you haven't heard it yet, you're going to hear it more and more and more. So if this is the first time that you're hearing this term, it is basically the term that's being used to politely explain when your AI tool is lying to you. It hallucinated. Well, why did it hallucinate? Because it's programmed on a data set that may not be perfectly true or perfectly untrue. And so it has to make some deductions about what it is that you're looking for. And Copilot perfectly knows KQL, but sometimes especially what I see with like ChatGPT is I'll be like, ChatGPT, I need a KQL output that lets me see X, Y, and Z thing. And it will be like, oh, by the way, if you want to see X, Y, and Z and double Z thing, here's some theoretical KQL that you can use. And I go plug it in and it's like not real KQL, right? I haven't seen this happen in Copilot yet, but I suspect because it is driven off of OpenAI, Copilot for Security lives on top of OpenAI Studio the same way that ChatGPT does. It's just its own containerized environment that's developed specifically for the use case of interrogating things like this in your Microsoft tenant, whether it's M365 or Azure, that it's going to have some similar funkiness. And I'll show you, I've got some evidence of that. I'll show you. Again, this is a conversation about myth versus reality. Well, in this case, Copilot did a fantastic job. It produced some KQL that lets me go and find all the things that are known to be malicious. And this malicious IP's value right here is something that's integrated into Microsoft's KQL, where it basically has a table where any IP address that has been found by Microsoft's threat intelligence team, which is a combination of humans and automated processes and machine learning, it will basically get flagged as a malicious IP. And so if you know KQL, or now if you don't know KQL, but you've got access to Copilot, you can quickly discern whether a user, an authorized privileged account in your environment, or a service principal, or a customer, anyone that is touching your environment with an IP address that is bounced off of that table as malicious is going to get flagged here. In this case, the demo environment I ran it in didn't return any results. It's got limited use cases and isn't exposed to the public, so it didn't find any malicious IP addresses, but you could basically take this same KQL and put it in your environment and run it. Now, there's two ways to do this. Obviously, Copilot, not only did it assess what I wanted, it produced the KQL, and then it ran the KQL. And that tells you that there's an embedded experience where it not only produces the methodology to do the threat hunt, it will actually conduct the threat hunt for you and then produce the output. But there is always reference material at the bottom of your result if it associates it with an environment where you can do this. Like in this case, I could go hunt in the M365 environment with this KQL now, and then open up an investigation and do a bunch of things. So right off the bat, you can see where it is integrated with your Azure environment, that you have the ability to go from 0 to 60 much more quickly than if you don't know anything about KQL. Then you've got to go learn about it and then go figure out where to put the KQL to do the threat hunt in the M365 portal. Before I move on to the next example, does anybody have any questions about that? I will call out that I have developed KQL in ChatGPT a little bit faster than Copilot. You'll notice up here that this basically took Copilot about 1 minute and 20 seconds. We're getting very, very blessed and probably a little bit impatient. I am especially. So I'll speak for myself on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was others' experience. Using these tools, when I'm waiting longer than 30 seconds for GPT to start even its first letter, I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm starting to feel it a little bit. And so that's been an interesting kind of perspective shift for me, that we are basically getting so spoiled with these technologies that, to me, I'm like, I think that Microsoft has some work to do to improve the user experience. This needs to be a little bit faster, in my opinion. But you know for certain that this is going to get faster and better. Okay, so Copilot hit it out of the park, total home run. And besides the speed, I would say that they cleared the fence on this. So I decided to just take it from 0 to 100 miles an hour as quickly as possible. I was like, okay, you did that, but can you do this? And the thing that I asked it to do next was build a workbook in Sentinel that shows all the users that have logged in from more than one country in the last 30 days, and then help me create a logic application that sends a Teams message to a specific alias with a list of the users that have come in from more than one country in the last 30 days. And I need this logic app to run once a day. I just loaded it with a bunch of conditions. And it, in 8 seconds, told me that it couldn't do it. It sort of just rolled over on its side and, put its belly up and was like, give me a tickle, because I don't know what else to do with this. And I thought this was really interesting because I didn't expect it to be able to figure this out, but I didn't expect it to come to the conclusion that it wasn't going to be able to do this as quickly as it did. So let's break this down. I knew that it could write a query and help me threat hunt for malicious IPs in the environment. And as long as you are keeping it at the moment with Copilot's current state, its status quo, to kind of singular tasks where it's very mission and very targeted focus, you're going to probably get a good result, especially if it's something that you can just query for. But in this case, if you're not familiar with Sentinel, Sentinel is Microsoft's cloud native SIEM. It is competitors of Sentinel are things like QRadar, Logarithms, Splunk, places where you can take a lot of logs at once and put them in your SIM in order for you to alert against those logs, to create alert logic that will correlate activity. Now you might be asking, why do we need a SIM if we've got that unified defender portal? I can log into security.microsoft.com and see all the incidents. Well, the reason why you have a SIM is because not everything is in your Microsoft cloud. If you have Palo Alto firewalls or Cisco ASAs or Zscaler or some kind of web appliance on-prem or domain controllers that you want to send additional alerts, you get a SIM so you can get all of that Microsoft cloud goodness in one place, but also start comparing that data to your on-prem data, your third-party, your multi-cloud like AWS and GCP or third-party SaaS and PaaS applications. You get all of that inside the SIM in one place and give it the ability to talk to each other. So my expectation is that Copilot should be able to leverage Sentinel, that SIM environment, to conduct some of its analysis. And inside of Sentinel, you have the ability to create a workbook, which is just Microsoft's language for a dashboard. And a dashboard is a place where I can show a lot of these things at once. Hey, if I've got a third-party tool in CrowdStrike, but I also have Defender for Endpoint, and I've got Okta, and I've got Proofpoint, these tools don't all natively talk to each other. I want Sentinel to get them to talk to each other. So if I see this user doing something bad over here, and this user shows up in Proofpoint for not a great reason, maybe they're on the naughty list over here in Okta, I need Sentinel to compare all of those results. And you might have a workbook, a dashboard to synthesize all of that at once so that you can just log in the morning. You've already got this pre-formatted environment where you can see the specific scenarios that you want at a glance. Well, it takes some time to build those manually. And my experience with ChatGPT and Gemini and Anthropic is I can give it a multifaceted problem to solve and it will get to work on it. My assumption is that Copilot can read what I'm asking for and then decide, oh, I need to do something in Sentinel. I need to build a logic app, which is something completely different in Azure, and start piecing it together. Well, its answer is, I'm sorry, but I'm unable to assist with building a workbook in Sentinel or creating a logic app. My capabilities are currently limited to providing information and answering questions based on the data and functions provided to me. I recommend reaching out to a Sentinel expert or consulting the Azure Sentinel documentation. Maybe link me to the Azure Sentinel documentation, right? I would love a little bit more juice here than I got, to be honest, but again, I'm not surprised that it came to the conclusion that it couldn't figure this out, and this is why. Copilot's entire functionality is based on plugins. In the exact same way that GPTs now have custom GPTs, where you can go look at the library of chat GPTs and say, I want a GPT that helps me play sports bets on horses specifically, or I want a GPT that helps me write Word documents, or in Bill, your use cases, I want a GPT that helps me build a spreadsheet or a document. And I want it to source its research for this document from the 10 following places. Copilot for Security similarly runs on plugins. We know from the first use case that Copilot has a plugin for KQL, but what you can tell from this response is it doesn't have a plugin for workbooks in Sentinel. And logic applications are the thing, it's a conditional based kind of automation, which would allow me to say, if I see malicious IPs in my environment, then I want to send a Teams message to Chris that says, hey, Chris, you need to go look at this IP. And if I have a plugin that allows me to talk to my ServiceNow or my ticketing system, I want you to cut a ticket in my ServiceNow. And if I have a plugin that's connected to my Outlook SMTP relay, then I want you to send an email message to this distribution group that says, hey, we've got a fire and I'm leaving a paper trail. Because it is plugin oriented, you can pretty well bet that Copilot's going to have the ability to do all of the things that I just described as soon as those plugins are available. And that could be 3 months from now. That could be 9 months from now. So as far as the myth versus reality conversation goes, temper your expectations depending on your role and responsibility, but just know that the future is incredibly bright because it isn't just Microsoft that's building plugins. It is third-party service providers like Bluevoyant that's building plugins as well. And we're already working on a number of plugins to help our customers with their use cases. And it's possible that you'll have like a plugin library, just like you would browse GitHub. I think I want this, this, and this in my Copilot. You load it in, and suddenly your outcome from this specific query is very different. It might actually link you to the plugin library. So I'll pause for a second. Anybody have any questions? Is this helpful so far, folks? If you don't mind, just drop a message in the chat, you know, that it's helpful to actually see what this looks like and what the art of the possible is versus what the reality is on the moment. Chris, you asked a great question. You are 100% right. Chris's question is, would it be better to break that up into multiple questions? Yes. I was intentionally trying to pressure test the system to see what I was dealing with. A lot of times when I work with the GPT tools, for instance, I will say things like, this is my goal. Can you tell me what the best way to get to my goal is and the questions you need answers to? And so I'll be like, hey, I need to write a document. It's for a board presentation. And this is the criteria. Ask me the 10 questions that you need answers to from me in order to satisfactorily build this document. And then I might even go so far as being like, also try to answer your own questions. So come up with the questions, try to answer your own questions, and then I will come in over the top of those answers and kind of massage, you know, the answers a little bit. And it actually does a pretty good job for the most part. It's interesting to follow that that process along. So that's just a little tip from me, like trick of the trade. But when it came to this, Chris, I just wanted to see what it could, like where the breaking point was. But yes, absolutely. I think in general, as you're starting out with any of these things for the first time, breaking it into kind of singular objects and staying mission oriented on specific tasks, you're probably going to get a better result. Bill, did you have were you coming off mute for a second?
No, I was thinking about somebody once called, I guess it was ChatGPT or Copilot, having a really smart intern.
Yes.
You know, but you have to check their work.
100%, 100%. I've been working on a project that's required a lot of code that I don't personally know how to do, and it's been a bit of a doozy to make sure that the thing isn't hallucinating on me, right? Because I don't know better. And now we've got two fools in the kitchen cooking together, and we're just having a grand old time. I'm like, ooh, I don't have any code analysis happening here. So yeah, this is such a funny comment. Chris said, I've had a similar experience with ChatGPT. I had to re-ask smaller questions. It's like talking to a young kid sometimes. I wasn't going to say this, but I almost want to say now that Chris has said that these tools have helped me be a better parent. I've got a 2-year-old that could come in at any point and make an appearance and introduce himself to all of you. But what I mean by that is, like, sometimes I've got a 7-year-old too, and he's right at that place where he's kind of back talking a little bit, and he comes home without bringing home his reading homework. And I was like, hey, why didn't you bring your homework home? And I've started, like, this goes back to that prompt engineering thing. Prompt engineering has really helped me reflect on the way that I am inputting my question to my 7-year-old. I'll be like, oh, I need to ask this a different way. Well, why do you say that? Why can't my kid just understand me? I'm going to, like, you know, flick them on the air or whatever, because Copilot and GPT have taught me that I'm the problem, and it's not them. It's actually me that's the issue. Like, I shouldn't be so dense. I really need to think about the way that I'm constructing my questions, and that's so important. And it's made me, I feel like, a better communicator. I'm better at setting expectations, and we don't need to be robotic about it, right? We want to humanize that expectation setting, but I will really reflect more deeply on the way that I prompt my children now because of the, you know, hundreds of hours that I've been using these tools now. Funny comment, Chris, and so true. And this is actually, there's Chris's comments on full display in our next example here. So I'm like, okay, what can Copilot do? And I want to ask Copilot itself, like, what are you good at? Like, what can you actually do for me? And so I feel like a good starting point to get to the bottom of that is to ask this question. In order for Copilot to produce value, what are the minimum products that need to be deployed in my tenant? Well, I made a mistake in the construction of my question, because I'm just assuming we're talking about Microsoft, right? And Copilot is not, like, on the same page as me. So I got all of this output about Amazon Web Services. And I'm actually kind of annoyed originally when this pops, because, like, Copilot took 36 seconds to start telling me all the Amazon things that it could potentially integrate with. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Who's talking about Amazon? I want to know what security or operational technology in the Microsoft stack, Windows 10 and 11 Enterprise and Professional, Windows Server, which versions, 2016 and above, just 2019, what are we talking about here, right? But it tells me all of this Amazon stuff that I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is actually my fault. This is possibly useful, right? I won't say that this isn't useful, but this wasn't my question, because my customers want me to tell them, Micah, what do I need in my environment to be minimally viable in my Copilot experience? Meaning, what is the 1, 2, 3, 5 technologies that are mandatory, in your opinion, for me to have a core set of technologies for Copilot to be useful? If you don't have Defender deployed, Defender for Endpoint, if you don't have Entra Identity Protection licensed and deployed, if you're not leveraging Sentinel to aggregate logs from third-party sources, what's your Copilot experience going to be? That was really my question. So I didn't love this answer, but this was just an example as to how what Chris said is so true. And so I changed it up. I said, not AWS services. I'm talking about Microsoft products. What are the minimum licenses I need from Microsoft and products deployed in order for Copilot for security to be successful? And this is where I got a little bit concerned, I'll be honest, because it started using names of products that are no longer in existence today. And I actually think that I cut it off. But Azure Sentinel has been renamed as of like a year and a half ago to Microsoft Sentinel. It put in here Microsoft Cloud App Security, which has been renamed to Defender for Cloud Apps. It was talking about Azure Security Center, which was renamed and almost repurposed entirely into Defender for Cloud. And then it made me realize that certain plugins have access to different data that is date gated. So when you use GPT, it's like, I'm sorry, my data source, it goes back to is only as recent as December of 2023. And you're like, well, I'm trying to find out if Kate Middleton is actually missing or not, right? Which is like a silly story that's in the news as of this past week. Bing could probably answer that, because Bing gives you a near up-to-date data set. But GPT is not going to be able to answer that, and Copilot can't answer that either, because the plugin that it used is like a general knowledge-based plugin for the Microsoft Learn documentation, or a web plugin that is not current in time. And so that's something to be mindful of as well. But it basically gave me a laundry list of the tools that it says need to be deployed. And so because of that, I developed a system for helping customers determine if they are Copilot ready. And I'm going to come back to our use cases, but I'm just going to quickly show you this. So I developed a Power BI dashboard for our customers to use that tells them how well deployed they are in their current environment and whether they're going to yield pretty solid Copilot results. So just to quickly show this off, and if any of you want to reach out and find me, I'll just put my email address in the chat. I'm happy to run this for your organization as well. Just find me at micah.heaton@bluevoyant.com. This is basically going to be my commitment to you to help you know if you are Copilot ready, essentially. So if you give the roles, if you give the checklist use case to your internal team and say, hey, this guy I met at the meetup group is also willing to give us kind of a run through, no cost. I'm happy to just put you through the paces. It's really quick to do this, to generate this data. And I can tell you how well deployed you are against these products that support Copilot integration, and whether or not there's an opportunity for you to create kind of prioritized recommended, a list of prioritized actions. So Secure Score will give you like 250 recommended actions, but I don't actually think all of those are relevant for Copilot. So I've actually kind of narrowed those down to a list of recommended actions that I've weighted based on normal recommended actions and high impact recommended actions. And how well deployed your environment might be against these specific actions will tell you the kind of results or maturity or posture maturity or governance that you're going to be able to get out of not just your Copilot experience, but your Microsoft security experience in general. And so some really good insights. This was an actual customer's data that I completely sanitized and put all of the Marvel Universe names on here. But the kinds of things that you'll get out of this, if you are leveraging some of those Defender tools like Defender for Endpoint, we can show you how well deployed those configurations and policies are, and ensure that your maturation is at a level enough where that next investment in Copilot is useful for you. And maybe our conversation will yield that like, oh, I don't have these defenders. Maybe I should activate some trial licenses to suss out whether or not these tools are going to be valuable to my organization before I go and buy Copilot. Like the early access program price for Copilot was considerable. It was a substantial cost. They are changing the pricing model, and all of that data will come out on April 1st. But before you go buy Copilot and invest in Copilot, you might want to determine if the right tools, the requisite technology that really drives the Cadillac of the experience are in place. So we'll tell you if your defender policies are in a place where you can actually detect if you have risky devices in the environment, then Copilot can also see this and help you build a remediation plan around it. Or maybe you're tracking, you've got identity protection deployed in Azure under Entra, formerly Azure Active Directory, but nobody's watching it. Like, are there some policies we could put in place to corral the user experience and then build a practice of leveraging Copilot to hunt against user risk? It's like this customer, I showed them that they had a sign-in presence in Southeast Asia, and they were like, holy smokes, we don't have anybody in Southeast Asia. What's going on there? And I was like, okay, well, this is a great use case for Copilot, actually, because if you have this technology turned on, Copilot can see these things, and then you can say, what are the policy conditions I should put in my Azure identity protection to stop this from happening, but also to report to our security operations team when bad things are happening. So just friendly offer from me as a follow-up to this event, for being so gracious and letting me spend some time with you guys to let you build kind of a relationship with Bluevoyant. We're happy to run this, on your behalf. I know that we have 2 hours, folks. I promised Bill that I wouldn't take you the full 2 hours, so I just have a couple more things that I wanted to show you. So I showed you what Copilot could do, and then I showed you some things about what Copilot couldn't do. I want to show you, in fairness to Copilot, some things that you can do, because Chris was like, well, why can't we just give it, one job to do at a time? You can, and you absolutely should. Copilot also has the ability to analyze a file, whether that file lives in your environment, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, or if it's a file that you potentially want to upload and then submit for analysis. You can, and in this case, the file associated with this hash, which was popping up in one of the incidents in Defender, Copilot gave me a really nice readout as to, whether it was bad or not, and it determined that it was actually a variant of memeing cats, which is a known hacking tool. I don't love the word hacking in our industry and cybersecurity. As an MSSP, we typically try not to say like, oh, you got hacked. The point is that there is a compromising file in the environment that could be leveraged for malicious activity. And if you're not a threat hunter, or you're not somebody who knows how to safely detonate these files and break them apart to explore the code and the executable aspects of the code, Copilot will do this for you. It is like the difference between running with just the flip phone, which, by the way, I took forever to give mine up. It was 2015 before for work reasons, I even switched to, a quote unquote smartphone. But my experience was obviously very different. I went from having to, know things in my mind or manually go look it up at my PC versus having this capability in my pocket. And the same is true of Copilot. I don't personally have the background where I know how to safely execute malware, but Copilot will help me deduce to do that function, to perform that role. So you master this capability to augment your existing core capability as a practitioner of any kind. And all of you already have probably a pretty good background in Azure. So extending into a place that you otherwise would have been a little bit uncomfortable in, you tell your bosses, hey, I feel like if we get this Copilot thing, I can really ramp up and upskill in a way that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to. That's a true statement. That's a true statement. And you're going to see that more and more. So, I would encourage folks to embrace it. If you aren't using, some of the folks that have been in the chat, they're like, oh yeah, I'm using these tools, I'm getting a good experience. If you haven't done that, you're not too late to this party at all, because these tools are changing every single day. But I would encourage you to embrace it, and embrace it for reasons more than just, hey, I want to send an email to my boss. Is this too wordy? Can you rewrite it? Or I'm writing this brief for, our sellers. Can you make it more accessible? Can the language be more accessible or more inviting? Or can you make me sound super exciting? And I'm an engineer. Sometimes I just say things in plain speak and I want to spruce it up a little bit. That is a fine use case, but I would invite all of you to push it a little bit and just say, hey, I want to hunt for something bad in my environment. Can you write the KQL for this use case? Can I see if, my executives are logging in from another country so I can help them understand if they, have compromising behavior on their account? Push the limit of your interaction. If you've just been using these tools for a very specific purpose, just try to push it a little bit. Can you give me the Python script, to do a specific thing? Can you generate an Excel pivot table or the VLOOKUP logic that I can put in a macro in my Excel? The limit is starting to more and more look like the sky with some of this stuff. What you're looking at here is a really poor resolution screenshot of the embedded experience for Copilot. So this is to show you two things. There's a standalone Copilot that lives at securitycopilot.microsoft.com. And then there's an embedded experience. And if for those of you who don't spend a lot of time in the M365 Defenders, this view is what it looks like when you open incidents in your M365 environment. And it will give you all of the incidents in the last X amount of time associated with a specific severity level. Sometimes you get a single incident, which is, Kevin's on the call, or Frank or Caitlin, somebody tried to log into your account and there was an initial access attempt. They weren't successful. And so there's one incident that gets logged. But sometimes there's a multi-stage incident. And what that will look like is somebody sent you an email with a link that was malicious, it got clicked on. Because of that, you sent essentially in plain text or some authentication chain your credentials, and then folks were able to access your system with those credentials, and they were able to deploy a malicious payload that then with those same credentials, they got access to your device and they activated that payload. And from there, they were able to conduct reconnaissance activity and spread, their tendrils, that payload suddenly on 10 different devices. So now they're looking at SharePoint, and now they're looking at on-prem Exchange, or now potentially they're getting access to your user store on the domain controllers because your credentials are the same there, and they're replicating tokens and whatnot. Suddenly this gets really confusing. Like, okay, I understood what I was talking about when I said somebody tried to brute force my account and tried like 10 different passwords. Like, okay, that makes sense to me. But now there's like 15 different incidents that are all associated with each other, and all the various Microsoft technologies across the spectrum of Microsoft Stack are talking to each other and coordinating their analysis. And I'm not 100% sure what I'm looking at, because these are acronyms and specialized cybersecurity language that I don't know. And when I started working in security, this was hard for me because I had a little cybersecurity dictionary that I was flipping through. And I was Googling a ton. I was like, what do these acronyms mean? These people who have been in my space for a long, long time, I was very much behind the curve. Well, you can see on the right-hand side here that Copilot is literally your Copilot. The embedded experience, not the standalone experience where you prompt it, you say, can you do the following thing? This embedded experience lives inside the security tools proper and is automatically doing very specific functions. So if I'm looking at that same Mimikatz tool, which right here, it found that Mimikatz was part of this file that I submitted to it, it will give me a complete breakdown of those multi-stage incidents here. And I'm so sorry that I blew the resolution on this, but it says initial access, became execution, became credential access, then became lateral movement, meaning the maliciousness was able to spread and then took command and control of multiple systems. And then as the tools were trying to shut it down, it was doing what was known to the security tools as defense evasion. Like maybe it was renaming processes, or maybe it was generating outbound network activity to get to another system that it wouldn't normally, like just trying to stay one step ahead. You know, in the Matrix where they're flying those ships through the tunnels, ironically, those nasty ships were also called Sentinels, but they were crawling after the ships and they were taking little turns and diving, trying to get away. It's very similar thing where malicious payloads don't just show up and sit dormant. They actively try to crawl around and evade, and Copilot can give you a really nice analysis that if you were not a security practitioner, would be near impossible for you to generate this kind of output. But now you have the capability to tell your boss, look, I don't have all these certifications and degrees, but I have the ability to think logically and talk to these tools to get the outputs that will help me generate really polished incident response analysis that I can give to a security practitioner, or I can report upstairs. Your boss is like, hey, I clicked a link I shouldn't have. I need to know the full extent of the damage as best as we can, as quickly as possible. That would have taken quite a while if you are unfamiliar with how to do that. And anyway, writing this stuff up anyway takes time. Now you have the ability to do that within minutes, literally minutes. And that is incredibly, incredibly powerful in my opinion. So just to give you a snapshot and some proof that Bluevoyant is starting to build these plugins and develop some capability, I just put on the screen here that we see an opportunity where Microsoft develops these incredible capabilities in the lab to build some programmatic mastery right on top of that. So if you start using Copilot, or you are, provisionally using some of the Defender tools, but you want to take that next level where you build some of those automations I was describing, where if somebody clicks a malicious link, I don't want to stop at that. I don't want to just generate an incident report and send it to somebody and tell an adult. I want to build a set of automations that really explores the full extent of the damage, and then send a Teams email, and then send an Outlook message. And then maybe I want to revoke a user's MFA token while we're at it. Hey, they clicked this link, they probably shouldn't. Shut them down. Or at least on the specific device they were on, quarantine that device on the network. They can still use their phone. If their phone's in good shape, they can still get to their email. But maybe their corporate-owned device, we want to trigger a set of responses. That's where a company like Bluevoyant can really, really come in and support with clarity, help you form your adoption journey and your vision. I've got these things, I've got the enterprise licenses from Microsoft. How do I really get these things to talk to each other? And if you come up with a list of like 10 automations or use cases, you're doing more than most organizations or most folks around the world at this point. A lot of folks we have come to us say, I don't know what I don't know. And that's a starting point. But if you start thinking about, you know what, I do this manual task every Friday and I am tired of doing this task. I'd much rather automate a lot of this task and sign off without feeling like I missed a step this week or something like that. That's where an organization like Bluevoyant can really help you kind of level up and take that next level. And some of the things that I've put on the screen here are the uses of those plugins that we've developed where, hey, we think this signal or this alert from Microsoft is a little bit insufficient. Microsoft has a lot of really great rules, but I'll give you an example. If Bill logs in from his house and then drives 25 miles and 30 minutes later, from when he logged in at home, logs in from the office, he's got this new job coming up, he's going to log in from a new place, potentially. That's not quite impossible travel, but it might be near impossible. We'll say that's anomalous behavior. Not only is it anomalous, it's near impossible. And so we want the system to start to watch that risk. Or maybe 9 times out of 10, Bill logs in from the same device to the same application in the same browser from the same IP address, but that 10th time, he logged in from a hotel kiosk to the Outlook web access, which is not abnormal. Excuse me, it's not outright malicious, but it is different than his normal baseline pattern of behavior. But the Microsoft rule that detects impossible travel, if Bill logs in from Antioch, but 10 minutes later logs in from Paris, that's absurd. But the rule in Defender for Cloud apps that detects that doesn't say Bill logged in from Paris. It says Bill impossibly traveled. Where if you're a SOC analyst, you're like, well, where's the rest of this information? You know that you might want a little bit more. So what you're seeing on the screen is us leveraging Copilot in order to do more. Hey, let's add a little bit of query logic to this existing rule that helps us see where the country of origin was from that generated that impossible travel alert. That way our SOC analysts don't have to go look in the system and figure that out. That's not something you need to continuously do manually. The intention is to drive down the amount of manual attention that you have to apply to your work. Put these tools to work, but to Chris's point, sometimes you just have to massage them and kind of talk to them in more remedial ways, but you can absolutely get to some of these automated outcomes, which are truly spectacular. And sometimes Microsoft, again, they make these incredible tools in a lab, but they do rely on, there's a reason why they sponsor meetup groups like this, because they know that we're going to hover over the thing, the shiny object and figure out what makes it tick. And we're going to come up with really good insights and develop these feedback loops where we come back to those product teams and say, I think Copilot needs to be able to do this. And the more that they can empower folks to do for themselves, as opposed to outright building feature requests, They're absolutely going to. And one of the things that I'll close on is in the realm of cybersecurity incident response, you have detection tools, EDR capabilities like CrowdStrike, like SentinelOne, like Carbon Black, like Defender for Endpoint that sit on devices to determine if something bad is happening. This is different than your antivirus software. Your antivirus software works on a signature database that says this this file's hash is known to match this malware, so it's a match, therefore it's blocked. EDR technology, which stands for Extended Detection and Response, is watching for behavioral insights to cross a threshold of risk where it will shut it down. And it's like, hey, Bill does typically log into SharePoint 4 times a week. And when he does, he pulls down maybe 50 megabytes worth of data. He never, ever has logged in 5 times a week. And on that 5th time, he downloaded 6 gigabytes worth of data off of a library. Like, we should probably shut this down. So your EDR has the ability to watch user behavioral activity and apply analytics to it. And sometimes it will flag it for a specific category, and it will apply some flags. Like we saw a few of those earlier. A flag was defense evasion, or a flag was lateral movement, or a flag was command and control. Well, maybe that's not sufficient and we want to add additional flag, but we don't know how to interact with the detection logic. You could ask Copilot to do that, which is what you're looking at here. Tell me all the techniques, tactics, and procedures that are associated with this analytics rule, and then let me modify it to add another one, for instance. So Bill, we've gone a little bit longer than I expected to go, my friend. I'm going to do a quick check just to make sure. Oh, Chris was making a joke about the Kate Middleton thing. That blows my mind. So before we wrap up here, I'll just say that like there's this conspiracy right now that Kate Middleton is missing. And I'm starting to believe this because I'm seeing all of these. I'm seeing, like, I saw a picture of Prince Harry that was very clearly artificially generated. And you know, the telltale sign of artificially generated pictures of humans is that, like, they still can't exactly figure out the fingers, and his fingers were all over the place and they were like webbed fingers. And I was like, what is going on? That's why I was making the joke that, like, a lot of these tools are based on data sets that are not real-time data sets. And you just have to be careful to check your work and just make sure that, you know, there's still a human operator that's needed. So if we could close up here, Bill, on the myth versus reality conversation. The reality is that Copilot for security is an incredibly capable tool with very specific functions that are associated with very specific tools. You need those tools deployed, and you need to understand those functions, and you can get to those outcomes. Barring that, you do need to check its work, and you do need to make sure that whatever code or KQL that it produces, that before you send it to somebody else's finished product, there's always a human operator. So the myth part of that is this is not going to replace you as a human. It still requires human to operate it.
Right.
You can accelerate your output. You can produce fantastic results for yourself in terms of your professional journey and for your organization in terms of security outcomes. But a human is still required, the same way that when you're at self-checkout at the grocery store, like, you still got to scan it. It's not picking up your groceries and putting it on the shelf for you yet. We're probably getting there, folks. We're probably getting there, which is why I'd encourage everybody, the more you use these and stay out ahead of the curve, where we start to see potentially the way that this impacts the workforce in terms of automations, you're always going to be in really good shape if you stay just right out in front of, you know, where the capability is, where the value of these tools starts and the human intervention is required. I want to thank the group for giving me some time to kind of just share my screen and talk through my personal perspective and philosophy around these things, and also for being super easygoing, not forcing me to stick to my slides, but let me just keep it conversational. Anybody have any last questions or want to come off mute before I hand it back over to Bill? Hopefully this has been helpful, folks. I have not yet had a chance to review the other content that you've had. You bet that I'll go and look at that YouTube and see how I did, but I appreciate you bringing me on. And if the universe brings us back together and I get to be an honorary Tennessean, I would be happy to. Thank you so much, Bill, and the team.
Micah, we have people from all over the place in the group.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That
Globally distributed meetup group. I love it.
Hey,
but
Mike,
Well, thanks for
a
having me,
global
team.
group.
Go ahead, Chris.
do you know, they don't publish anything that says this much content's, 0 to 100%. They don't do anything like that, do they? You know
Say
what I
that
mean?
no,
So
say that a different way for me.
if you would break down what Security Copilot would look at, all the different features, the different products, they don't have any kind of dashboard that says, Defender for endpoint, we have 70% done.
Nope. Nope.
But
Nope. Nope.
and I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes tons of sense. They absolutely
Well,
should. So that would
it
be
should
super
be
helpful.
for us, but would it make sense to have that public?
It would absolutely make sense to have. So the reason why I developed the dashboard that I did, that I was showing, is to do exactly that. Because if you look at, let me pull it up real quick. If you look at security.microsoft.com and you go into your secure score, that's not all 100% relevant, Chris, for your Copilot needs anyway. So like, I think there is a bit of a disconnect between what's required to properly drive really great results. The Marie Kondo meme where she's like, this one sparks joy. Like, you need to know how you get your Copilot to spark joy, and it's not helpful. So let me screen share real quick. If you go to your secure score, which is at security.microsoft.com, and there is a similar one in Defender for Cloud when you're looking at your security recommendations for your posture management, and you click on secure score, you get this page that shows you your recommended actions. And in a modern tenant, which is fully licensed for like M365 E5, there's 249 actions. That's before the third-party integrations. You could have well over 300. This is the closest thing you have right now, Chris, to helping you vet how well deployed your individual tools are. But in my opinion, when we're bringing customers into our SOC, we have a mandatory set of recommended actions that need to be complete, because we don't want to drive an inefficient experience into our SOC. We want certain things to be done so that if something does fire, an alert pops off, our SOC analysts know, like, oh, it's not because something is configured incorrectly. It's because we know that before we brought them into the SOC or made them Copilot available to them, that we did the following things. So the dashboard I put together is my company's kind of estimation, myself and the work of some other Azure and M365 engineers. We don't need all 250 of these things done. We need like 70 to 100 of them done. I would 100% welcome Microsoft bringing their own version of this to the market, at least in the portal, so that, like, do you see right here, devices is Defender for Endpoint, applications, Defender for Office, and Defender for Cloud apps, as well as some native sourcing from Office 365, and then it gets some input from Intune and some of the device management side. But I want to be able to tell you, as a user or my customer, like, hey, I don't expect you to deploy all of this stuff, but we at a minimum need to get this well deployed. And if Microsoft released their own visual experience for Copilot readiness, which I think is really your question, like, is there a place where I could visually see at a glance how well deployed I am in order to drive good outcomes for Copilot? That would be incredible, man. This is what I got for you now. I put this together. I think it's not bad. It's got a little bit of a Fisher-Price color scheme going on, but yeah, if some adults at Microsoft could take this and turn it into like a Copilot readiness kind of assessment, that would be incredible. But in the meantime, I'm happy to run this for you, Chris.
Micah, that was a tremendous presentation. Okay?
Hey, thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Really, really good. Thank you.
All right, I'll put that. I'll keep that right in my heart, Bill. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And come back next month.
Hey, if you've got a spot for me, you want to talk about something else, I'm not afraid. This is a good
We
group.
actually
Thanks,
have a
everybody.
different speaker for next month, but
I know, I'm teasing. Find me sometime down the line. I'll come
Sure.
back. Chris, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if it's on your screen where you had so many per app, I think if they publish that for Copilot, because Security Copilot's a limited scope, it's not as broad as ChatGPT. And there's times ChatGPT drives me nuts, but sometimes you can cheat and have it go out to the internet and look for stuff, even though it's its source is out of date.
Yep. Okay, very good.
Yeah. Mika, I have a question though.
Yeah,
Like
Vijay,
maybe
I
it's,
saw you put the
yeah,
question in the chat. Go ahead and share.
yeah. This is something like maybe kind of like maybe we are working in a maybe organizations where all those security policies are like there are like many different things happens in a big organization, and we have to go through like all those policy check-ins or like the code repository, like all the security
Yeah.
vulnerabilities things, and there are like multiple things going on with all those things. Considering all the work what developers do, or like considering all the things or the developers liabilities on day-to-day life, how you would suggest maybe an engineer should use Copilot to carry out all those activities to protect the data, or just making sure he's not putting anything into that the data, whatever the data he's using on his day-to-day life, how should like he utilize the whole Copilot thing
I'll give you
to
two answers, Vijay. So
okay.
today's conversation was specifically about Copilot for Security, which is a very specific tool that Microsoft's making available to support a bunch of use cases. I explore
Right.
those use cases in a checklist. I relinked it. That's just a starting point. You're asking two questions, in my opinion. Code validation is not something that Copilot for Security is best served to do, but there is a Copilot for GitHub, which you can absolutely pressure test your code as you're going through some development work. Like, hey, is this using the most up-to-date secure parameters? Are the plugins that I'm calling, or the repositories or libraries that I'm calling, or the way that I'm connecting different data sets together, am I doing it in the most secure fashion? And GitHub is absolutely the answer for that. It's incredible. Microsoft is selling M365 Copilot and GitHub Copilot like hand over fist. I probably shouldn't say this on a recording, but I will. The wow factor of GitHub Copilot and M365 Copilot is tremendous, because if you're like a marketing rep, you're like, build me an entire marketing campaign with a document, a spreadsheet, a RACI chart, and a slide deck for this go-to-market strategy, and you can have it completely done in 30 minutes. The wow factor on Copilot for Security is a little bit different, because if you're not a security practitioner, some of the screenshots I was showing, don't strike you like a bolt through the heart. You're just like, yeah, that's neat. But if you have tried to do security response, you're like, wow, that's actually sweet. So I want to start figuring that out. So I will tell you the other aspect of what you said. Remember, I said I think there's two answers for you. The other answer is, I know for a fact that the Defender for Cloud team, having worked and talked with the Defender for Cloud product team, is working on an integration with Azure that will allow you, there is a Defender workload called Defender for DevSecOps that will allow you, if you're doing your code review in Azure, that will allow you to interrogate the posture, the security posture of your code. Now, Copilot today doesn't have that integration with Defender for DevSecOps. One, because Defender for DevSecOps is still in private preview and probably coming out to GA at some point in the near future. But right now, it's just looking at alerts. So if somebody were to put malware in a storage account or a container, Copilot will be able to see it. What Copilot isn't capable of doing today, but this is the integration they're working on, is they will give you an integration that will make recommendations. So you could actually ask Copilot, hey, I've got this code. It's in dev. Can you review it with the DevSecOps integration and tell me if I am following best practice configuration and procedure? And then at some point, hopefully in the near future, not 9 months, I'd hope 3, Copilot is going to be able to do that for you. So start playing with the things that are available to you now. There is an open AI studio, Vijay, that you can start playing with today, and you can develop your own sort of Copilot. That's something we didn't talk about today, but Open AI Studio would be an interesting use case for you to start playing with. Take a look at the checklist that I put, and send me an email if you want to talk about this more, Vijay. I put my email in the chat, but it's just micah.heaton@bluevoyant.com.
Definitely. I think whatever, like maybe it gives me like what I need to, but I think this is a great answer, honestly. Maybe you just consolidated it consolidated everything, whatever like maybe the day-to-day things I'm looking for, considering the code, considering the data and like everything. Yeah, great. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, VJ, for being here,
Yeah.
and great question. All right, Bill, I've gone on too long. I'm handing it back over to you, but thanks everybody for having me. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a tremendous month until your next meetup. And if I have the pleasure of sitting with this group again, I'll look forward to it.
Thanks a lot. We'll see
Thanks,
you
Micah.
next time.
Thank you, Bill.